Good. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Sean Vanaman. He studied at the University of Southern California, film, writing, and politics. He worked as a writer and designer in the video game industry since 2006. He worked with a number of companies, including Telltale Games, the Disney Corporation, and then also Campo Santo, which he co-founded. This is since 2013. And he contributed to a number of games and directed them, or helped direct them, including Tales of Monkey Island, The Walking Dead, and also Firewatch. And today he will talk to us about narrative design. So welcome, Sean.
Hi. I'm going to talk about Firewatch. Are people familiar with the game? Because I kind of touch on the game a little bit, but I will do a bit of a primer at the beginning for those. Actually, just show of hands if you even know what it is. Oh, okay. And then played it. Okay, so we're in the zone. It's not going to be, I don't have to go too long into describing it. It's a first-person narrative-driven adventure set in the woods of Wyoming. It doesn't look like that. It's going to be a minute in this slideshow before there's a screenshot, so I apologize. But you walk around in first person and experience and mystery and build a relationship with a voice on a radio who is your boss. And things that should be relatively mundane end up spinning up into a psychological drama that's happening to you in real time, and you develop this relationship with this character by making dialogue choices as the game goes on, and it takes place over the course of a summer. So it has breaks and chapters in it. And I want people, if you want to feel free to ask questions or ask for elaboration while I'm going, just because I'm going to talk about relatively abstract stuff for a little bit, for probably the first chunk of it, because we make abstract games. If you know the game, it would be really hard to walk in and pitch to literally anyone, because we tried to do it, and then we just decided to make it. And so much about what you guys are working on probably is being able to distill your game down to a mechanic and be able to tell not just your professors or each other, but possibly people who will let you make the game for real, what it is. And this isn't, don't do this, but we didn't do that. We eschewed that and made Firewatch instead. And it's a game that's completely just about the story and the characters. You may call it a walking simulator, and I'll talk to you after this class about that. But outside, where I can use language and stuff. Yeah. So I was talking to a game developer named Robin Walker, who works at Valve. He made TF2, so he's a god. And I was talking to him about something that he had been working on and how I felt like a lot of it was going to be driven through the stuff that really drives Firewatch, which is the writing and the characters and the stuff that happens to the story stuff that happens to you or you make happen. And how that stuff was stubbed into his prototype, and he's like, yeah, we're going to get to that stuff. And I was like, well, it's going to be the thing that defines the feeling of what you're making, and therefore kind of defines the product. And he's like, yeah, I know, but you can't really prototype that stuff very easily. To which I completely agree. And also because I was talking to one of the best game developers ever at Valve, I was like, I trust that you'll get there and it'll be good. But something I wanted to do with you guys is kind of break down how we, on a very limited budget, we made this game for a very low amount of money with less than 10 people. And how to set off on a journey to make a game like this when you don't really know it's good until it's finished. And that's sort of that can be a real bugaboo of narrative-driven stuff, especially stuff that has animation and voice, and we paid voice actors to a lot of money to be the characters. So if it's wrong and you don't know till later, that sucks and is expensive and takes the wind out of your sails. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just our beginning process. So maybe you'll find that useful in the stuff that you're doing, or if you it looks like you're halfway through your games right now, but stuff you'd be doing in the future. And then I'll get into like the actual storytelling devices inside of the game, and that stuff will probably be more like applicable now. So I want to ask, this is something I'm personally curious about, is like not necessarily where you begin making your game, but like when you make your game, like what at the beginning, this is like an open question right now. Like what are you personally trying to figure out? And I'll talk about what we're trying to figure out usually. Does anyone like can remember, so many weeks ago at the beginning of the semester when you're like, what are you trying to, right here?
I think right at the beginning, it's like what kind of experience are you trying to give the player, and like what main factors in your game are going to drive that experience?
Sure. That's close pretty much to what we do. Does anyone have like a different answer or anything? You don't have to. I'll just stand here until someone else says something. So what we're trying to figure out always, drink of water for dramatic effect, is we are trying to define tone. That's like all we care about as a group. It is like, in tone is sort of the collective feelings that drive the experience. So not dissimilar to what you were talking about. Just to like give it a more like specific definition. It's the thing that will inform every creative decision and all the mechanical decisions in the game. And it will ultimately take us from this like collective ideas, like we have a bunch of ideas, and it'll hem them in and say, you're in, you're out. And then what we're left with is actually a commercial entertainment product, hopefully. It is just like the collective feeling around it. And like you guys know it because you digest tons of media, and from the way a game looks on the screen when someone's trying to sell it to you, to what it feels like when you're playing it, to what it feels like when you see a screenshot, what the logo looks like, so much of that stuff is setting a tone for your expectations as a player. And we try to figure that out at the beginning. And we do that with a bunch of different sort of like tests and prototypes. So obviously concept art. These VizDev tests are usually, like that looks pretty sweet, but that would not be something you could play and have it look cool. So that's like usually like cards and stuff built in the engine that is just, we use Slack. I'm sure you guys use Slack. So someone is, on this game, it was like Ollie and Jane. Ollie Moss, who's the 2D artist, and Jane, who's the 3D artist. They were the art team together. Just like grabbed a bunch of Ollie's paintings and then laid them into the engine to like make it look and feel like something, right? So if you're a gameplay programmer and you have like no art skills and you're seeing this stuff start to come on board, and like you can't, like this level, like you can already tell that like these trees we stole from the Unity asset store. This like light that comes in, hopefully you can see it. That right there is just like fake. That's just a plane. You like, if you like walk around it, it's just gonna look like Geo. That box is real though, that's pretty sweet. We shipped that. Yeah, and obviously the game doesn't look at anything like that, but was helping us figure out the tone of the game. And that stuff is playing right into like our mechanical prototypes. So we knew what was important to the game was going to be the character and the space. I looked for a cool GIF of the early radio mechanics we have, so that'll come later. But like in the game, you look at something and then you target it, which you do in every first-person game. And instead of putting a bullet inside of it, you pull a trigger and you say something about it. But we also developed this camera mechanic, and both of those feed right back into the stuff in the previous slide, right? Like, people are making this beautiful world, and I want to give, we're as designers trying to figure out ways to tell the story with mechanics that feed off of that beautiful world that our friends are making. And we like want to look at it in interesting ways and motivate the player to look at it in interesting ways. And then that actually tied into a lot of the character stuff I wanted to do, where like an initial prototype we had for making these dialogue choices. At the beginning of Firewatch, I'll show it to you. There's a like choose your own adventure style thing. And I was like, oh, what if you had to look at the choices? It was bad. It was really shitty. So we cut it. But it all tried to like play on this idea of like looking at a beautiful space. So we have a camera in the game. You don't take photographs of, I think that is a popular internet meme called dick butt. Yeah, we also like find a bunch of crap. So that was just a bad bug I found. I just wanted to show you some stuff while I was digging through our GIF pile of, like so much of the game just like looks and feels like this. But even that, like, it's no skin off your back to like just like make the sky feel like something, and that is all playing into the tone. And it sounds probably like I'm making this like tone conversation about like, oh, if you're making an adventure game or a story-driven game or the writer's in charge, like it is a Campo, which probably would stink, I assume. This stuff actually matters, I think, to every game. It just sort of matters more for our stuff at the beginning. Like the difference between a lot of really great games and a lot of like good games with good mechanics is mostly tone and presentation and the cohesiveness of that stuff. Whereas like there are games that I really don't like the tone of, but are just so mechanically tight that I'm like, whatever, it's so good. And we just aren't those type of designers, but still want to make games that do well. So we just have to start in a different place. And we kind of call like that entire process of figuring out the tone of the game pre-production. That can last, on Firewatch, it lasted 6 months. On the game we're working on now, it's not over, and we've been doing it for a year. So it just kind of depends on the length of it and stuff. But in that, we're just trying to like get this bit working. So I write some story stuff that we might ship, we might not, and that should inform and feed off of the mechanic, which is inform and feeding off the art. And when those things are working and striking the tone that we want, we feel, and we can see, like, honestly, if we're doing this, like, I swear to God, like we could like, actually, no, not we could, we do. We cut a trailer for the game. So I'm doing that right now in the new game, where we have this stuff pretty much locked in, and the end of pre-production will mean we have a trailer that we will like show the world, you will see, that is made in engine, but like if you turned around, there would just be a stock Unity blue sky and ground. And then we'll make a level that's maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes or just a path. In Firewatch, it was you left the tower, you walked through the woods, you've got a rope, you went to rappel down a thing, and then you like T-posed down it and walked out to the lake, had a conversation with some characters, and walked back. And we were able to test so much of the character dynamics. Obviously, you had to prove out all the art and the mechanics, and we could see the sort of like arc of the tone of the experience. Yeah, when we're done with that, we go, okay, well, geez, we made like 15 minutes of the game. Be nice if Firewatch was like 5 hours. So what's that? We've made like 5% of it. Is that right? We made none. So we have to just do that like a bunch more times. I think that is right, 5%. Yeah. So the thing is like we make games about stories. You might not want to do that. That might not be interesting to you or have your skill set. But if it is interesting to you, it's super scary because like I didn't ever talk about we write the story. Like that hasn't happened yet. And that is probably troublesome. When I went to school, I studied film, and you start with a script in movies, and that is the blueprint for everything going forward. And you can't really do that in a game. There are some studios, and I have like some friends and I guess contemporaries who do that. But like we're gonna bottleneck the whole studio around like me being like, I will write my masterpiece, which is remarkably inefficient. And when you're paying for your own game, you like can't do that. Or if you're making an indie game, right, and you're like, you have this great team together, but you can't start on anything until the story is perfect or complete, like they're just gonna go work on other stuff, right? And then maybe you lose them to another game or something. And so much about your success in this business, unless you're Lucas Pope, who is a genius in this one-man team, he made Papers, Please, you're gonna need to rely on like the cohesion and quality of your team is gonna be so important. So you can't just like wait, people can't just wait around. So yeah, like when you're writing a story, you have like a beginning and a middle and an end, and you gotta get all that stuff sorted out. And you also have like all this other crap to figure out before you can feel confident in where you're going. And this is sort of like what Robin was talking about, right? Like, if you have to be sure about all this stuff before you start making your game, like you're never gonna make your game. And this is where I think, like we still struggle with this, and every team is ever gonna struggle with this, where you go like, okay, like I know a good story has these interesting characters and these conflicts, and this is like the main arc, but then there are these subplots, but it's a video game, so how do you play that sort? How do you play a moment like that? And how do you, how does that fit? Is the world contiguous? Is there loads? Are there levels? And you sit there and you just like can't find any mooring. You can't figure out how to like where to begin. So I have learned to just embrace the fact that the story is there. Like we have a core conflict and a core conceit. Firewatch, guy goes into the woods, a mystery happens, he comes out of the woods. But I just try to embrace the fact that I just don't know yet. So what I do is I start writing, and not necessarily to figure out the core story, although that stuff is being layered in, but I'm actually writing the prototypes that help continue to define the tone and continue to define the characters and end up informing a lot of the other stuff. So I can show you guys kind of like the way I used to do it. On Firewatch, I just use Twine. You guys know Twine? Anybody? Raise a show of hands, Twine. Oh, okay. So like Twine's cool. I recommend it's a cool place to start, especially. I don't also know you guys' expertises. So I know a lot of people, you're probably using Unity for your projects, but I don't know if you guys are all technically minded, or if like, I know among you, there's someone who's like, I like to write and I like that games that have that stuff in it, but I can't program. I'm a scrub. Like, I know you're out there, because I was. Twine's a really great place to start. Oh, that's not Twine. That's a mountain. Son of a gun. How do I do that? I will tell it to mirror my displays for a second. Sorry, guys. Cool. All right. Behind the scenes. Yeah, so Twine is pretty cool in that it's you make these little boxes and you write in them, and then there's a real basic markup that says, hey, there's a choice here. This is if you play Firewatch, I made the opening of Firewatch. You play sort of the first 10 years of this dude's life, or the last 10 years of this guy's life, and you make some choices about his life that then pop up in the core story. So it's represented in 2D, which I'll show later. And then in the game, it's just spoken about. He's able to say like, oh, I like met my wife at this place, because you made the choices in the prologue. And this was like, I made this because we were sitting around and everyone was like, oh, who's Henry? Like, who's the main character? And as opposed to being like writing an email or like this is who he is or a description, I just made this game. So in Twine, you like make these little boxes and stuff, and then you fill them in. It's pretty awesome. And then I think if I hit test play, it'll just run. Yeah, so then it actually just makes an HTML file where you can play the opening of Firewatch. These choices actually made it. I wrote these in 2013, and they somehow shipped in 2016. So you have a conversation in a bar. You start dating. There's a vignette that I obviously wanted in the game. I'm looking forward and like pitching ideas inside of these prototypes, being like, here you go, you pick a dog. You've been in this relationship now for like a year. You go to a pound and you want to get this one dog, and your girlfriend wants to get this other dog, and then you can sort of like pick the one that you feel like would keep you guys safe if anything bad happened, or pick the one that she really likes. So you can pick the dog. In this prototype, his name is Bosco, and there you go. I also use something. I'm just going to touch on it because it's like probably not super fun to like look at like a bunch of code for a minute, but you might find this. There it is. Cool. I use ink. Does anybody know ink? Ink. Guys, ink's gonna change your life. Ink's awesome. Ink is awesome. It also integrates into Unity. It is so good. It is a real. Oh wait, it's got swears. Cool. So ink is like got like just like a text editor over here, and then this is like this little window is actually running a game in real time, which is printing a text adventure over here. So if you remember Twine, it's very choose your own adventure. You can do really remarkable stuff with Twine. There's this like Twine developer named John Iliff who's making these like space sims with it that are pretty amazing, and I recommend it. It's called Seed. He made a game called Siege Ship or Star Seed or Seed Ship, I think, where you're just trying to like go out into the universe and find a planet to live on. He made it all in Twine. It's pretty sweet. This is made. They made 80 Days in this. If you guys have played that game, it's on iOS and Steam and stuff. Very cool. It's a great example of a narrative-driven game with cool systems that was made by a small team. Highly recommend it. But I picked up Ink because it's pretty basic. Like the markup's really easy to learn, and you create some variables up here if you want to, and then you just sort of like write in a markup that says like this sort of thing here is a choice, and this tells you where to go. So it goes to these options here. And this is actually a prototype for a game that we killed. It was ultimately called Byline, I think. Yeah, and then we worked on it for almost 9 months. It was called Iowa internally, and then we named it Byline, which was a cool name, and then we murdered it. So if you want that name, you can use it for something. This game was about me prototyping what the beginning of the experience should feel like. It just starts, it has like some helpful facts from some of the story stuff that we've already, we know this stuff internally, right? Because I've been pitching story stuff off and on, but I do sort of like singular thought choices to start helping define the characters. This one's written in the like first person as opposed to the second person. And then we're in the bathroom. We're gonna go meet this guy down in the kitchen. Check myself out in the mirror. I look good. It was a game where you teleported, which is pretty sweet. Also really hard to make. So we're just gonna go out in the hall. We go into the kitchen. We'll just walk into the kitchen. We can go explore the house. We can walk into the kitchen. This guy's cooking me dinner, and he's singing some Chet Baker, and he mentions that his toilets don't flush because we did not flush the toilet. I can say I did flush. I flushed. What am I, an animal? I am an animal. I did not flush. So like, that's, if you're trying to, again, if you're like the person on the team who's like, I'm the writer, or like, I gotta make whatever. And I've found that this helps me establish tone in a way that the artists get excited about, that the programmers get excited about. It already starts to like hint towards size and scope of like, oh, we're gonna have this much like environment, and you're gonna be on interiors. And I get, like, if we had gone back, I guess we can go back. And we walk into the hall. Instead of going to the kitchen, we like take a left down the hallway. Like if you're a level designer, like Jake Rotkin at Campo is a level designer. I don't do it because I'm super bad at it. That's awesome, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm starting to build a picture of this space for myself. And like, this didn't cost me anything to make. You know, I sat down with this text window and just started writing. And it is a very simple markup that I highly recommend. Yeah, so let's go. Display. Wait. What? How do I do this now? We'll just keep going this way. Okay. So yeah, it's a really it's an ongoing process of, I'm gonna need my notes, sorry guys. I messed it up here. Window? What is this gonna do? Oh, there we go. Cool. So yeah, I'm doing like log lines and treatments and sort of bigger story stuff and a lot of structure to stay ahead of production. But the goal is to just have a structure and examples and a core conflict and the sort of nuts and bolts stuff that can kick off a story that allows us to know what the player is going to be doing and is again supporting the goal of the studio at that moment, which is just create the tone. And I also try to figure out what the end is somewhere around here, but not always. On The Walking Dead, season 1, definitely knew what the ending was. Not so much on Firewatch, as is obvious. Yeah, so this is again, I'm kind of hammering on tone. But the example I want to, if you've played Firewatch, you know that it's not all just about this sad man wandering around the woods. There's other stuff, and this relationship with Delilah and Henry is has texture and wrinkles and can go off in different directions. And I'm trying to get that human stuff in those prototypes as well. So I can write a game that is about a guy whose wife gets sick and he goes to be alone, and then also has moments in like this in it. Is it gonna work? Go. Oh, hold on. Play. There we go.
I found a little trowel. Maybe I should take it with me. Use the top of the beers.
Wow, 99% sure that's strawberry poop.
And I'm hoping that.
Maybe drop it.
So that was a piece of promotional material we made, but that was a prototype I wrote where I was like, oh, because we're deciding what line to play in the game, in the engine, at every turn, I can make it so if you pick that thing up, he says I'm holding it, and then if you don't pick that thing up, there's another joke. So I just wrote that as a prototype, and then it made people laugh, and it went in the game, and that's this stake, right? You're staking out this house before you you start pouring the foundation, and you're okay, the tone of this game has to support that poop joke Sean wrote. And that's good to know. Because once you're in production, again, is it in or is it out is gonna be so much about being able to build upon the foundation that you've already decided upon. So again, tone just basically lets all this stuff come together because we have this dramatic backstory, we got the poop joke, we have this camera mechanic, we have this radio mechanic, and now it's all sort of coalescing, and that just becomes theme, which you guys have probably talked about quite a bit. But that is the real heart of the creative product, and it's the thing that works in direct harmony with the mechanics and is going to feed back into them and make your thing awesome. So a good example is we had theme, and we had the radio mechanic, we had the camera mechanic, some basic getting around. And there's a guy in the team, two guys on the team, a guy named Nels Anderson, who made Mark of the Ninja, which is a cool game, and a guy named Will Armstrong, who worked in the BioShock series, also cool. And they really were and James Benson, actually, the three of them. James, do you guys play Ori and the Blind Forest? It's a platforming game. He actually worked on the Fable series, and you guys are probably too young to know about Milo, but He worked on Milo, which was a prototype by Peter Molyneux of a digital boy who lived inside a Kinect. It was pretty messed up, but just check it out. He worked on that. So yeah, they wanted to do something where like the traversal in the game was very like tactile and grabby, and like what was going to be our version. This is such a stupid thing to say out loud. What was going to be like our version of Assassin's Creed climbing? Like, how's this going to feel? So like I'm in nature and I'm doing nature stuff. And we were all super into it, obviously. But once we had theme, we were looking at this mechanic and we're like, do those even make sense? Like, you wouldn't be able, like, do we want you to have that level of power over this place and this level of command over this place? Is that tying into all the other creative choices we've made? Like, is that tying into the art style, which is tying into the theme and the tone of the game? Like, that's presupposes a lot of texture detail that is just not inherent in Ollie's work, and it got left behind. I think there's probably a pretty good academic argument for saying it made the game worse to leave it behind, but it made the product feel more cohesive. And also, the thing that's always going to limit you is going to be time, because like you're not going to go work at Rockstar, or you may, but you'll just hate it because you'll be doing someone else's vision. But like, you're not going to go become a director at Rockstar tomorrow, where you're just like, well, spend $1 billion on your game. Yeah, so that like gets, I don't know how much time this has been, but that's like the underpinning stuff of how we begin to make, like where we like point the company and go that way. And then once we're going that way, I'll talk about like the actual like nuts and bolts and devices about what's in Firewatch that you might find applicable in your game and like why they work for our game. But we can do like a break for questions, I guess I'm supposed to do. Getting a thumbs up. Yeah, what's that, man? Yeah, that is an excellent question. So his question was, how do you rectify being able to like make choices to have agency and like impact over the story in the game with the fact that like the character needs to be a cohesive, normal like person, and that's a like that is like so that is the I think at the crux of a lot of like what I'm always working on basically. It's a very good question. So when we were working back at Telltale, working on The Walking Dead, this is gonna sound really quaint, but in that game, we had to like pitch the idea that you made choices that you couldn't make again, because we'd been working at an adventure game company where you like walked up to characters and they just had a tree and it was like, what do you want to talk to me about? And then it'd be like ABC, but you could always just go back and make whatever choice. You could just like exhaust the tree. And we're like, no, you're going to say one thing and then move on. Like, it sounds ridiculous to think that that's like was novel at the time, but it was. And the rule we made then, that is the rule I applied to Firewatch, and I still do, but like I question it, is like Henry in Firewatch and Lee in The Walking Dead, like are who they are. They are characters that like have backstory and baggage, and then the choices we're giving you, or the like I'm trying to come up with, are the far extents of possibility for that character. What is like where are their extreme boundaries? And then I think this is like kind of like, I don't know, hoity-toity, but I think that like where those boundaries are for those characters is ultimately what begins to define who you get to know them as and who they are. You know, like so much of us as people, I think, is we start to define ourselves by like those boundaries of what we're capable of and what we've done, the things like, and to some degree, the things we regret the most, and some of the things we're the most proud of. And like the people around us may see us totally differently, but I think oftentimes when I want you to inhabit a character, I'm trying to like simulate that feeling of like, ah, man, I really shouldn't have done that. And like, no one cares, but like, oh, they should, you know, because you're carrying it around. And the cool thing about when you do it in a game is the game can decide to care in a real subtle way. And that was stuff that we focused on in Firewatch. So it's like, you're building the possibility space for a person. Like, would Henry, is he capable of doing X? It was cool with Lee because like, he had started and you kind of were told that like he'd possibly killed a guy, which is like that's actually really fertile ground to start with because you're like, am I capable of killing again? You know? He killed some people in that game, I think, is Lee. I can't remember. That's a very good question, though. Yes. Hi.
I don't play games.
That's understandable. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are two very big questions. I'll do the first one shorter than the second one. I'm also speaking extemporaneously. So if you're writing an article, this is not going to be on the record. Yeah. So the first question was, do you see a trend of like games as like providing some sort of like empathy, or games with like meaning, games for change, games for a purpose? So like I'm old-fashioned, but like I kind of think most stuff should do that. But like at the same time, and this is a thing that like we really try to focus on at Campo, is that like we have an ethos, we have a certain way we think about human beings and character and people and ourselves. That ethos changes, you know, like we've been at this for 4 years. We're people who started in our late 20s to early 30s. So like no one had babies when we started, and now there's like all these babies everywhere. I haven't made one yet, but I'm thinking about it. You guys don't care. Sorry. And yeah, so you just your thoughts change about people and stuff. But we are an entertainment company, and like we have 12 employees now. We try to pay them pretty well. You have good benefits. So it is paramount that, and also like if you bought Firewatch, like thank you. You gave me like $20. So did like 1.8 million other people, which is pretty freaking sweet. But like for that $20, I said to you, I'm going to entertain you and surprise and delight you for X amount of time. And that's a contract that we take pretty seriously as an entertainment company. So the real magic, I think, for us is to be able to add value to your purchase after you walk away, where you're thinking about the characters and thinking about having the story. And if you're thinking about characters and you're thinking about them as people, then you are like in an act, you are participating in an empathetic like act. And that feels like worth doing. And if you can make a dime doing it, then that's pretty sweet too. So I think it's important to remember, I just think you have to make a choice. And I have a lot of personal projects that aren't this way. But I do think it's important to know at the beginning, like, am I participating in a commercial enterprise, or am I making something that I don't really care if I make any money on? And I think I've seen a lot of indies burn out and kind of get jaded really fast, where they just didn't make that decision early on, and then put their heart, put so much of themselves into something that they hadn't committed to being a commercial product, and then when it didn't do well, felt like a lot of resentment against the community and just like their audience itself, and probably like missed opportunities to connect with the people who did buy it and did like it. So I just think that's important to think about. And then the second question was, you want me to speak about diversity in the games business. I'm happy to do that. So it's bad. You guys are here in Palo Alto. You're very familiar with the roiling, I don't even know what you would call it, the state of diversity in tech. In games, it's different, I think. It's a enthusiast medium that has been pretty much marketed towards young men for a long time. At Campo, actually, I'm going to talk about one thing that I think is just this is the one takeaway, as opposed to being say a bunch of pat that is just that everyone already knows. So when we started Campo, Jake and I are pretty fancy ourselves, pretty woke dudes. But we were like, okay, we left this job, we had no money, we had borrowed some money to get started, and we needed to get a team together to start making Firewatch. And at the beginning, we're just like, get our friends together, get like friends of friends together, and put everyone, like, we gotta go. We gotta make this game right now. And when you do that, like, surprise, we knew a bunch of white dudes. So we were able to get a team together pretty fast. And our art director at the time was Jane Ng, who's an Asian American female. And she was just like in a 1-bedroom apartment with like me and 7 dudes. And it was, that was the makeup of the company. But we talked a lot about what our values were and what we wanted this company to look like, because we didn't really feel like we had much agency. We went from leaving our jobs to starting the company to being in production in a matter of weeks. So we put the team together really super fast. But throughout Firewatch, like Jake and Jane and I, who are the most senior people of the company, just sort of talked about what we wanted this company to look like. And the thing that will happen, and the thing that has happened, and I think that the thing that happens all the time, is that you, on the one hand, go, okay, I would like there to be like better gender parity and more diversity. But at the same time, like, we're doing business, and we got started and we didn't think about it at the beginning. And if you have a modicum of success, I think we thought if we had a modicum of success that we were responsible to pause and build the company that looked the way we thought the company would be the healthiest and exist the longest in. And that meant growing and bringing in people of different backgrounds, like racial and gender. So now, like, we're at 50-50 gender parity. And guys, the company's like way better. Like, we make better stuff. We like just have better discourse. There's like less in-jokey bullshit. There's like Campo community tone to the conversation that you don't get when you just hire people who talk like you, because you end up just joking around the same. Like, that's where a lot of culture is made, inside of just like goofs. And that can be really like I'm sure if you come into Campo from the outside, you probably feel like an outsider regardless of your background, because the 12 people who work there we have a real tight community. And I think like we had to make a decision to do that. But like that meant that instead of finding a new art director in 6 weeks, because we had a lot of good applicants, but a lot of like people who looked and liked us, we said, let's wait 6 months. And it came down to a couple people, and we found the person who was right for us. But like finding diverse applicants takes time, and when you have the ability to build, you have to like commit to it, and it's just like so much easier to not, is the thing in this industry. But if we don't do that, that's just gonna be the case forever. So, when any of the folks who leave Campo like go to start their own studios or join someone else's crew, like we'll feel like we're like at least trying to participate in like building a company that's a part of an industry that we're like pretty happy to be in. So the takeaway from that is just like you have to stop sometimes and go like, we have an opportunity here to define our culture and to define what our studio is about, and you should be doing that all the time. And be honest with yourself about what, and I don't just mean about diversity, I mean about everything. But like, be honest with yourself about which direction you're headed and what it's going to look like when you get there, because you're in control, like especially if you're an indie dev. So that was a really long answer. I'm sure anyone is that satisfying to you in any way? Okay. Is it more questions? I definitely found, so the question was how I went to school for filmmaking and made the jump to games, and what did I find difficult about that? How and how did that happen? It happened because I got a cool opportunity being an intern for a guy who like went like, come here, I'll help you out. And that was at Disney. Not really a heavy hitter in the video game industry, but that's how that worked for me. That happened while I was a junior at SC, and then if I go back, I don't know what I would do differently, but I ended up working there a lot for the rest of school, like paid my way through the second half of school that way, because they paid me, which was cool, and they paid me decently. But I definitely missed out, I think, on some stuff I could have applied my skills to senior year, because I was just don't want to work, but whatever. It was hard for me because I didn't have any technical background, and Unity was not a thing, and the two little engines I showed you weren't things yet, and I really struggled at the beginning to find my place where I could make an impact. So I was actually going to get out of the game business, and I was just going to write TV, and started writing a bunch of scripts and pilots and stuff, because I was done. I know how to do that, and that kid from my class got hired and is making triple what I'm making. Sweet, let's do this. But that ended up getting me a job at Telltale, because they were making episodic story-driven games. And then the industry, when I left Telltale, I had okay gameplay scripting skills, because I was at a developer, but I could limp. The studio was big enough to where I could limp along, not being very technical. But when I looked around after I left, there was all this stuff that I could apply my skills to directly, like Twine and Ink, and now even the stuff I am able to do in Unity. So yeah, I would say it was not being a programmer then, but I don't think you have to be now. Maybe unpopular opinion, but it definitely doesn't hurt. But and showing you those engines was sort of if you don't know about them and you feel like you're less technically equipped than some people, was a way of being look, it's gonna be cool, you can do stuff. And those, if you know web development, you can do really cool stuff with that stuff. When you build for Ink, it generates 3 or 4 files, and one of them's an HTML file and one of them's a CSS file, and you just drop those on your website. And if you know CSS, you can just make your game look awesome, even though it's still text. But you can do a lot of cool stuff. So, and then you had a question. Yeah, it was. So the question was, how do you weight and judge dialogue options vis-a-vis what happens in the game, the output of the game, as you're going along and making those decisions? The truth of the matter is, on Firewatch, because we didn't understand what it would take to make the game yet, we were feeling it out. Now I know way better, but at the same time, our new game isn't just the cool thing about Firewatch is I could write new dialogue and have it in the game working shippable quality as long as Rich and Sissy could record it. If I wrote it, I mean, there was some stuff I fixed right at the very end where I wrote it, emailed it to both of them, and said can you just record this in your house and send it back? And then I was just it's just firing WAV files that go through an audio engine to make it sound like it's on our walkie-talkie. Super simple. I could figure out I didn't account for this or whatever. Yeah, I'm honestly just figuring it out as I go. I think looking backwards, you kind of get into this this spot where you go, well, I want to ship this thing, and we have to make it. So how branchy, truly branchy, can this game be? And then how branchy does it have to be satisfying? And I think I've erred in my career over scope on scope, and I'm interested in making a game that can be much more leave a lot of stuff behind. But because you're Firewatch ships with 7,500 lines of dialogue, and I think you hear 4,500, which is pretty good, But it could be it ships with 15,000 and you hear 3,000, and that's a lot of cruft, and that's a lot of stuff that And Firewatch isn't meant to be replayed. It's not a game that's keep playing me for all these different outcomes. It's really just play it once, and that experience is your role basically. So yeah, it's just about feeling it out. And when you're in production, you start to get a sense of how much stuff costs. You're oh, it's cool if we leave an entire quest line behind because it didn't take that much to make it. But that probably won't be the case in the new game. We'll see. It's gonna be expensive. I can, this one and then we'll dig back into some stuff. Yeah, that's cool. That's a good question. So much of establishing tone in Firewatch is art driven. How do you do that if you're not Ollie Moss and Janing? Yeah, I mean, I think that is a good question, and I think I'm not 100% equipped to answer it because I'm not an artist on the team. But I would say we have chosen art in Firewatch to be the real like tone-setting feature of the game. Like you don't have to do that, right? And you can pick anything inside of your skill set or their team skill set that stirs you to do that. You know, you could imagine, if you will, if actually, you know what, we do this thing, we do this like stupid project in film school where they give everyone the same script and they give everyone the same set, and then everyone has to shoot a movie, and there's like 10 groups. And they all look and feel really different because you can do crazy stuff with like lighting and casting and X, Y, and Z. And I think you could probably do a very similar exercise with the Unity asset store, where it's like if everyone's given like the same base assets, what are you going to do to make them like look and feel different? So I would say try to focus like less on what you're bad at and be like, oh, like, and just sort of like dismiss the premise that art has to set tone. Because I should say that like that's the way we did it, but it wasn't necessarily the way to do it. You know, if you have someone on your team who just happens to be like a pretty good musician or has like strong audio chops, you're gonna be able to do so much more than a team that doesn't, you know. And then you can look for like real cheap gets that just change the assets to fit your mood. Like things like full screen color grading and like a lot of that like VFX stuff that's in Unity 2017 now, I guess is what they call Unity. Like the newest version of Unity. This stuff's expensive like on a rendering, when you're rendering it, so keep that in mind. But who cares? You're making a student project. It has to run on a 1080, like whatever. You can do stuff with that to just dial it in. Like push those things that you can push as extreme as you can, and see what's there for you would be my suggestion. So, cool. I will just get into like some of the storytelling devices inside of Firewatch. So obviously we've talked about interactive dialogue. And I talked about the radio and like how it's used in the game. You saw like when you looked at the trial or whatever. That's like the whole game. You like look at all sorts of crap. And I hit on this early, so I'll just kind of blast through this. But it was a storytelling device that again, like it just solved like so many problems for us. And I think I've hit on every single one of them, but one of them was like, we need to make content fast. So how do we do that with audio? We don't want to do audio logs because those are like, you know, like, come on, get out of here. We can't just make a game where you're picking up audio logs because that's just going to feel like so much other stuff. And then we wanted you to be able to look at the world, and it was just like a thing we were able to decide on that solved a lot of our problems. But I talk about like these solving the problems, and there are storytelling devices that you should definitely choose based not on necessarily like based not 100% on the problems that you have, because you might not even know what those are yet, but like based on your competitive advantage. And that's sort of what I was talking to you about. Like, you know, guys good at audio. Like, you get like you're as an indie developer. Or as like a developer who's just trying to make a name for himself or herself on a big team, you have a competitive advantage that other people don't have. And it's beyond just like, you do have like your life experiences and things you're drawing from your creative inspirations, but there are things you're good at and things you're capable of doing that people don't have. And making a choice about how to deliver your narrative with that thing will feel awesome because you'll be in your wheelhouse. And for us, it was like, well, I wrote a ton of stuff at Telltale. I feel like I'm really good at, with like voice direction. Like I feel like I'm able to build rapport with actors in a way that I think is for me a personal competitive advantage, and I'd hold that up against anybody's. So it's like the narrative device that delivers the most of the content should be that thing that I feel like I'm pretty good at and I enjoy doing. And it's just trying to remember that is super important. It is the ethos with which all of Firewatch was made, which was like, what are we good at? And that is our competitive advantage, which is why the art is so forward and things like that. Yeah, and again, I guess this is more like ends up being more like a review because I talked about like the Twine backstory is like, again, like a way we develop the story of the game and get you to know the character, because Firewatch is sort of different than a lot of games. And this is like a narrative device that you should think about is like who your protagonist is. So we made the Twine backstory to just like define who the protagonist was for the team, and then we shipped it. But we had a narrative problem making the game. You're going to have this problem if you make a narrative game, for sure, unless you make like something that's like The Sims or whatever, which I would call narrative, or like RimWorld, which is a cool game. Like who your character is really important. And for a long time, probably a lot of the games you guys like look at are like Touchstone games of the past 15 years. It was pretty common that you were just like this silent protagonist, or you didn't have a lot to say, or didn't have a lot going on, or like a lot of complexity. And we got into this problem with Henry where we had presented the player a heterosexual male character who is going through relationship troubles, who is going to spend the next 90 days of his life with ostensibly a heterosexual female character. And like, I knew I wanted to like bounce off of bits of romance and like let them feel things for each other, even if they didn't pay off. And it goes like, I know as a creator that Henry is married. Okay, how do you know how to even begin to make choices in talking to this woman, given the sort of like social fabric of America at this time, where like two single folks on a radio all summer long, like how am I gonna get you to be able to make choices about this character, or make choices towards Delilah to build a relationship? Like, and we don't want to do a thing where like at one point Henry picks up the radio at the beginning and he turns over his hand and there's the wedding ring. He's like, oh, like how are you going to behave now? Like that's not what our game is about. Like what? Like, that's not it at all. Or let you go all summer and then he opens the drawer and like puts on the wedding ring. It's like, Henry's married. Like it's like, oh God. So we're like in this huge we have all this trouble, right? Like it's such a stupid question, but like how do we let people know that you're married in like, but it's not, it's like you're separated by circumstance. She's sick. Uh-oh. So then we had the Twine backstory. So like, I just wanted to like show it. Because, yeah. Is this working? We going? Come. There we go. So yeah, this is like very similar, and this is just how the game opens. Stuff I was showing you earlier. Let's go get that dog. So then we like found that it was super duper impactful. Like the crux of your like the early hooks of Firewatch were like getting to know Delilah and being able to pull from all these choices you make and make the game feel like your own. So
It's actually pretty damn cold up here. Yeah, they are.
So yeah, like that was like huge yield, right? So it's not just like how are you thinking of ways if you're making a game where narrative is important to sort of be reminding the player that you're capturing the choice or the thing that they've done and bringing it back to them. So like even if you like, it can be so simple. Like if you're making a game 2D, 3D, whatever, and the player like picks up a rock or like and can name the rock and then for some reason and can put it somewhere valuable or in their inventory or whatever. Like changing the UI text on that rock to just like the name, like Billy the Rock, is like the yield of that stuff is massive. It's like so big. And that's like a core narrative device of Firewatch, which is this like sort of like this interplay between giving the player like playful stuff to select and then just weaving it back in effortlessly as the game goes on. So like obviously like that could have been thinking that choice. It's like talk about Julia, who's your wife, talk about Bucket, talk about the bar you used to go to. All three of those are like, two of those are gonna be left behind, and then all three of those have differing dialogue and like swapping out the name of the dog. Hang out my dog Bucket, it would have said Mayhem if it was the other dog, things like that. And then like, we use discoverable artifacts all over the game. And something that I suggest is using them. So this is like, you can find some notes and stuff. Oh, look at this high-res photo Sean got off the internet of his own game as opposed to capturing a screenshot. Very nice. Scrub. We found that using this stuff to create subplots and to make exploring the world satisfying, because like, oh, I find a thing here, I find a thing there, is way better than relying on those things to be the backbone of your narrative delivery system. That's just like an observation we've made as designers. You guys have all played like games where that stuff's all over the place, and I'm not 100% convinced until someone in here like makes something and it makes me feel like an idiot that being the chief mode of narrative delivery in your game is like super important. And then I want to talk briefly, or end to talk about, I was asked to talk a little bit about environmental storytelling. You made me talk about that? Yeah. So I'll show, here's a clip from Firewatch where you like go down to a campsite of people who shouldn't be like setting fires, and they're actually off lighting fireworks, which you might be able to hear, and you're supposed to go down there and reprimand them. But as you like enter the campsite, you get a feeling for the space and like what type of people these are. I captured this in Engine, so it's on a build, so it's gonna be janky, as you can see. So like we know there's two people.
We don't need this in my life right now.
There's some nice environmental storytelling there. So that's obviously, if you play Firewatch, it's not in Firewatch. That's something I added yesterday as a joke to talk about environmental storytelling. Don't do that. Just like don't. Like, it's BioShock and Portal. They did it. They ruined us for writing stuff on the walls to tell your story. Just don't. It's just don't do it. Unless you can subvert it in a way that is clever and interesting and then can support your entire experience. But there should be like clothes drying out right there. There shouldn't be a texture that's on a projector. Funny story, putting that into the game last night, is it's just on like a texture projector, and its collision was all messed up for some reason. And I I originally had it on a different rock, like facing up, so you'd look up, like in BioShock, but it wasn't colliding correctly with the rock, so it was like painting perfectly on this beautiful cliffside, and then it was also drawing on the sky dome. So you looked up, and it was just like, no, all dead. It was pretty sweet. I didn't capture that. But yeah, so much of environmental. So there's this like one little anecdote I'll share about making Firewatch, where like Jane was making. There's a point where you go to Delilah's Tower. Spoilers for people who haven't played the game yet. Also, if you want to play the game, I will email one of your professors like a grip load of Steam codes so that you guys can play the game if you haven't played it. Oh, now we clap? Oh, don't you dare. How dare you? I woke some people up. Free shit. Should have done that at the beginning. Just with a cannon, they rain down on you guys. So like, all right, now you're gonna listen to me. I forget what it's like to be so in debt. Firewatch was on sale last weekend for $8.99. You guys just clapped for a foot-long sandwich. It's amazing. What was I talking about? Environmental storytelling. Yeah, so you go, spoiler for the free thing you just got. Jane was like, hey, I get a DM from her, a direct message on Slack, and it was, what does Delilah eat for a snack? I was like, and she would do this, she did this for a year and a half. What's Delilah's favorite movie? It's like, those teens down at the lake, like, what's their favorite whatever? What do they like about this? And that allowed her as an environment artist to actually just do the thing you should be doing, which is like put the stuff in the right place that creates the character. So like there's a half-eaten like apple and peanut butter in Delilah's tower, and that's her snack. Why is it half-eaten? Well, geez, why didn't she finish her? Like that sort of stuff ends up telling your story way better, because like we're human animals, like we understand that stuff, you know, like if everyone got up right now and just like left their bags and there were bags everywhere and someone came in, they'd be like, shit, like something bad happened, you know? Like you wouldn't have to even mess with the lighting, right? Just like mise-en-scène by itself would be very distressing for someone to come in and all your stuff was still in here. So that's just like thinking about environmental storytelling more like that. Just taking the one more step, I think, is really important. And then, yeah, so much of all, like, as you know, like all this stuff is just like, game's first person, you look around, like I said at the beginning, but it's like all this like ends up being dictated by the mechanic. So that's pretty much it. I have this presentation and the Twine, the actual files that you can download Twine at that website to, you can get Twine on the internet, just Google it. You need the old version. You gotta go to Find on USC though, .zip, eat it. Or you don't have to have the files. That's where I should put all the game codes too, just so you're like, yeah. Yeah, so I guess we're probably got like a few minutes if there's a burning question anyone has. Oh, something I wanted to say is something you might find more interesting than me just standing up here for an hour is that in the version in Firewatch that is now on Steam there's a director's commentary mode that I think is unlocked from the start. You don't even have to unlock it, but you walk around the world and there's like 80, like it's a scavenger hunt for these 80 cassette tapes. And when you pick them up, they pop into a Walkman and it's everyone on the team just talking about how we built the game. Like it's pretty crunchy stuff at a lot of times. Like our graphics programmer's like, he's Italian. So he's like, let me tell you about this thing I did. And then there's like things, we actually rebuilt a lot of the world to just like expose the way stuff works. So there's like, you walk into a platform and there's like 5 buttons and you're in the woods and you press one and it like becomes night. And you like press another one and it becomes like day. And then like that Italian boy is telling you about the time of day system. But there's like 80 of those audio logs. It's all in the director's commentary mode. And if you're just interested in how he built this game, it wasn't just my stuff. That's a cool way to experience it. So that's it. I'm done.